So what I'm going to talk about first is my current position and the team and the work that we do. And then I'll give you an idea of my background and the career path that I have taken to get to my current position. So I head up the science communications team at the Stowers Institute, which is about 3 miles down the road and is a private, nonprofit, basic biomedical research institute. How many people have heard of the Stowers Institute? Okay, a lot, great. So in my department, our primary objective is to share the Stowers researchers' discoveries and findings and other news about the Institute as well with the scientific community and with the general public. And some things that fall under my department's umbrella include the Institute's public websites, our social media channels, printed materials such as magazines and brochures, and illustrations. And in terms of like the pros and cons of my position, there are a lot of pros. I really enjoy what I do. What's most enjoyable to me is being able to share scientific stories and, in a way that's engaging to people that have various backgrounds and various levels of understanding. Another pro to my position is being able to work with the people on my team who bring many different kinds of expertise together to our group. So on my team, for instance, I have web developers, public relations specialists, graphic designers, scientific illustrators, and writers. So it's really interesting to interact with those people, some of whom come from science and some who come from other industries. In terms of cons of the job, I'd say that one of the toughest things that we have to do is to deal to assist with crisis management when something comes up that we need to deal with. But we do develop plans and strategies to handle crises, and then we apply them when we need to. And fortunately, those are few and far between. Okay, so to take a little bit step back now, in terms of my education, I went to KU as an undergrad. I majored in biology and chemistry, had an opportunity to do undergraduate research there, and realized that I loved research. So finishing up there, it just seemed like the natural next step to go to graduate school. I went to Berkeley, California, and got a Ph.D. in molecular and cell biology. My thesis work was in developmental neurobiology. And then as I was finishing up graduate school, of course, that question, postdoc, no postdoc, what do I do next? And one factor that came into play there was my thesis advisor was very involved in the biotech scene in the San Francisco Bay Area, had started a few companies, and I was able to learn from him what some of those opportunities were. And I decided not to do a postdoc and to go straight into private industry at a startup biotech company. And the transition was actually not too difficult because starting as a scientist at this company, it was essentially like an industry postdoc. And one of my first tasks was to write an NIH grant for the Small Business Innovation Program. That grant was awarded, and I was a PI for a couple of years on that grant. Then, for personal reasons, I moved back to the Kansas City area, and since I had enjoyed my experience at a startup company in California, I looked for a similar opportunity here, joined a biotech startup as the third person at the company after the two co-founders, and was there for 10 years. Pretty much saw their first drug candidate go from early discovery stage through proof of principle, through scale-up manufacturing, through preclinical, and then moving into human clinical trials. And right now, that drug candidate is in phase 3 human clinical trials. So anyway, I was there for 10 years, and near the end of that time, I had become more familiar with clinical research, and so my next position after that was at a contract clinical research organization where I joined their science and medical writing team. That had always been an interest of mine, science writing and communications. And so I jumped at that opportunity, and I was with them for a little more than a year. Worked mainly on writing clinical study protocols and reports, but also had a variety of other projects as well, literature reviews, materials for investigators and physicians. Then I took a little bit of time off to care for my kids who were young at the time. And then this opportunity at the Stowers Institute came up, and that's where I am today. So let's see, how are we doing on time? A couple more minutes, great. So there were 3 points that I wanted to make. One, and actually the first 2 I think have been well covered by a lot of the other speakers. The first is happiness and the importance of being happy with what you do in many aspects of life, and that includes your career as well. The second is networking and the importance of networking. 2 of the 4 positions that I've had were due to networking, and sometimes it's hard to rationalize the investment in networking because the payoff may be quite far down the road, but you just never really know when it's going to, when you're going to be able to take advantage of those connections that you've made. And then the last point is kind of a tip in when you're job hunting and interviewing, particularly if you're thinking about a position in private industry. And I've had the opportunity to look at probably thousands of CVs and interview hundreds of people. And it's important to be able to describe not only what you know, but what you have done. And particularly in private industry. So employers want to look for, they want to bring people on that are effective and productive. So if you can talk about, your knowledge and your training, and then give specific examples of how you've used that to produce something or to problem solve or to come up with some innovation, I think that goes a long way to convince a hiring manager that you're the one for them. And another tip there I just might add, I'm surprised at the number of times that I've interviewed people, and at the end of the interview, it just seems like we stop asking each other questions and then the interview ends. So my suggestion there is if you have an interview and at the end of the interview you're really excited about that position, express those feelings and ask for that position, or say something like, I really look forward to joining you at this company, or what is the next step, and be energized about it. I think that goes a long way to show your enthusiasm for the job and for them to take you as a serious candidate. So that's it. Thank you.